Hi, everybody. My name is Rosalie Bibona, and I'm here with Paulo Franciscan. I am the Senior Product Manager for Wireless, and today we're going to take you through a path for universal APs for on-premise solutions. The first thing we want to talk about is infinite enterprise. That's the cornerstone. That's what we're driving to: mobility, cloud, and data. Mobility doesn't just mean users and devices. It's actually your business. Your business is now mobile. The cloud, infinite scalability, flexibility, simplistic. Data, think about real-time data and the ability to crunch real-time data and make good decisions. That's where we're going at Extreme, and that's the cornerstone for us. Universal AP. How about taking an AP, the hardware, and not refreshing? Currently, most of the deployments are on-premise. I would say about 50, 60%, whether the controller is in the cloud, whether it's a wing controller, a campus deployment. If they're in the cloud can actually talk to XIQ now. So now we can have the same user experience in the cloud as we do on-prem. And that's what the drive towards universal is all about. So it's a single hardware for multiple use cases. We simplified the ordering process, we reduced the sparing, and we now can have selectable OSs. So once you register with the cloud, you have a consistent user experience across multiple platforms. So Extreme's OS unified our platforms. If you look to the left, the AP302W was introduced in the first quarter of 2021. That's our 11AX wall unit. That is universal. You actually register with the cloud and you can have it straight into the cloud in IQ Engine, or you can be on-prem with the Wing 7 OS, whether it's campus or distributed. The AP305C and CX was launched in March, and that again is universal, the ability to be IQ Engine or to be on multiple OSs, the same user experience. The AP400 series will be actually launched on June 1st. So again, IQ Engine, same user experience. That's what universal is all about. So if you take a look at current deployments, now you can have scalable across flexible deployments, whether it's on a campus controller, whether it's on wing controllers, whether it's indoor, outdoor, they can all talk back to XIQ and have the same user experience. That's key with the universal hardware. The user experience needs to be the same across multiple platforms. So we introduced this hardware, universal, and the whole concept of universal. The AP305C and CX is a dual radio AP, and it's a 2x2. It has 1 gig Ethernet port, BLE 802AF, and it's a 0 to 40 for the external antenna versions also. The AP302W is universal. That's our wall plate. That's the first 11AX wall plate that is dual 5 gig. There's nobody in the field. There's none of our competition actually has a dual 5 gig wall plate. It has 4 ports for PoE out and sensing. This actually replaces all our current 11AC wall plates. The AP410C is a universal AP. It's our tri-radio. That basically gives us a 1x1 dedicated sensor full time and a 2x2 on 2.4 and a 4x4 on 5X. That's the state-of-the-art tri-radio, so you can take advantage of Air Defense Essentials and some of our other software applications. Now, the AP460 is an Omni Sector Outdoor. That's IP67 rated, and that's an outdoor AP. So we have 2 other models, the S6C and the S12C. The S6C is a 60-degree sector, and the S12C is a 120-degree sector. So those are internal antennas, but those are very popular modes. They all share the same kind of IP ratings for outdoor. Again, those are multi-gig ports. Now, the 400 series will launch on June 1st in the channel. So let's talk about how you identify. We kept the part numbers the same. And when I say we kept the part numbers the same, the AP305C and the CX have the same part numbers, but how do you tell if they're universal? You can tell by the serial number, and we call it the green dot on the outside of the box or on the regulatory label. Anything above this serial number and higher is universal for the 305C and CX. And we launched this in March 2021. Again, the serial number and the green dot. Now the AP400 series will launch on June 1st. And the reason is you have to pay attention on the 400 series to the serial number and the green dot, but the serial number actually drives it. Because if you look at the serial number that I have highlighted in red, anything that was manufactured after January 25th and 28th for these models is basically universal. And again, this platform will be released on June 1st. So always use on the 400 series, the primary thing to look for is the serial number. We talk a little bit about transitions. Now, some of these are not a one-for-one transition. So anything to the left there is in green is a universal platform. Anything that's shaded on this slide is universal. So the AP410I can transition to the AP410C. Some things that aren't a direct replacement is the AP410E. The AP410E is external antennas, but you can actually use some outdoor versions. They're about the same price and they're internal 60 and 120 degree sectors. The AP460 doesn't have a direct replacement, but then again, you can use the outdoor versions for the 60 and 120 degree sector. The AP305C and CX, the difference there is the 310E has a temperature of spec that is a little bit different than the CX. The outdoor ones, the 360s, they're not a direct replacement, but we have added antennas and they're in the antenna guide. So now you can take the AP305CX, have the antennas indoor and do outdoor placement. The antennas list will be in the antenna guide based on country. Again, the consistent warranty. We're trying to make the user experience so simple for everybody at Connect. You know, we feel the customers when they have to remember different serial numbers and different warranties, we made it simple. The universal limited lifetime warranty is the same part number across all our universal platforms. So now you have a consistent warranty. So you can have limited lifetime warranty, limited lifetime for the software updates and the upgrades, and then the TAC OS is only 90 days. That's a difference. So you need to put support on it. But again, the simplicity of limited lifetime warranty and the user experience is so important to us. Now I'm going to hand it over to Paulo to cover the cloud onboarding.
Thank you, Ro. So yes, the universal AP onboarding starts with Extreme Cloud IQ. So if you don't already have an account, it's very easy to create one. Simply go to www.extremecloudiq.com. And right there on the registration form, you can create an account right there. It defaults to Connect level, and that's good enough to do onboard management. But if you already have an account, then simply use that, log in, and then you're able to use the workflow for onboarding of universal APs onto local, just like you do for any other AP or any device in Extreme Cloud IQ. So the big difference when it comes to onboarding local management is that there's now an enhancement on the onboarding screens that provide you the option to define right up front how these APs that you're onboarding are to be managed. Are they to be managed by Cloud IQ in the standard cloud managed operation? Or are they actually intended to be managed by the local infrastructure, such as an Extreme Campus controller or a Wing controller? For those deployments, which is primarily the focus of this presentation, they are going to be locally managed. You would select the second option. So deploy your devices for local management. Once you select that option, you then presented with the option to define the serial numbers of the devices. Either explicitly, one device at a time, or a few devices, you can comma separate them. But if you have a small number, you can just put them in the text form and let them go. Or there's an option for CSV importing in case you have a larger number of devices. And if you have the CSV available from your disti, simply plug the CSV in. All you really need in the CSV is just the serial numbers of the devices. You don't need any of the other fields. Once you have that, the cloud will actually validate the devices that are being onboarded for both model and, as Ro pointed out, the previous presentation, the serial number in the previous slide, sorry, some of the serial number dependencies. So the cloud will actually do that assessment and determine whether the device will be successfully onboarded for local management, if it is compatible with by both model and serial number, or if the device is not part of the universal AP set. Maybe it is the right model, an older revision. In that case, it will not be allowed to continue with that local onboarding. For compatible devices, the cloud will let them in, full status, and then you'll initially see them listed as declared on Extreme Cloud IQ on your account. And one easy way to tell is that you'll see them listed as host name, which is just a generic placeholder for the device, since we at this point the cloud does not know anything else about them other than the serial number. Now, once those devices come into the cloud, once the devices boot up and they discover into the cloud, so they will use that first front end, just like any of the cloud-based device will do, to hit the redirector, hit index into your account, and then from there, determine that they actually are supposed to be wing-based. You'll actually see on your account that the device, the acknowledgement on that particular transition is that the device record will switch from having just a generic host name to an actual default host name, more descriptive of the AP model. So that's one easy way to tell that the device has hit the cloud, has discovered the cloud, and has now been told to go to wing mode, but it has gone to that step. Once the device goes through that step of now being told to go to wing, the device will reboot into wing 7. And it will then use the local discovery mechanisms to try to find a controller, either extreme campus controller or a wing controller, so that becomes his management place of management infrastructure place to manage the operation of that device. Those controllers can then be subsequently connected back to Extreme Cloud IQ to provide you ongoing statistics on the state of those devices as well. So just a quick representation of the actual flow chart of decision that the Universal AP goes through. So out of the box, the unit ships, as Ro mentioned, with both the capability of IQ Engine and Wing 7 built into the firmware. IQ Engine is the default operating system. It is the default operational mode. So the AP will boot out into the IQ Engine image. It will then contact Extreme Cloud IQ. We'll do the discovery, redirect it into the correct account, and then it will then determine whether or not how it is to proceed. If the device has been onboarded for cloud managed, which was the first option, then the device remains in IQ Engine. It will continue to perform all the functions that are corresponding to the IQ Engine operation. If you had onboarded a device for local management, as I mentioned, the device will actually reboot into Wing, will be told to reboot into Wing, and then once it is in Wing, it will then perform a network discovery to decide whether it's operating in a campus personality or in the distributed personality, depending on those network options. So for example, the HTTP option 78 isn't indicated that it's being to operate with a campus controller. So we'll use that to connect to that controller, where the HTTP option 191 is an indication of a distributed Wing controller. So we'll use that to connect to that Wing controller. Once it connects, it will now become managed by that entity, and it will receive all its configuration from that local controller. Once it is actually fully configured and operational, the administrator has the option to connect those controllers back into Extreme Cloud IQ into that same account, so that now you have the devices managed locally, but still see the status within the account, your Extreme Cloud IQ account that you use for the onboarding. So that's one nice way to tie it in all back to Extreme Cloud IQ as a single pane of glass for all your management infrastructure. Next. So one of the key points to keep in mind as well is that these devices, as part of that initial boot experience, will go into Extreme Cloud, will connect into Extreme Cloud IQ. So a couple of things to keep in mind, that that point of installation or that first boot needs to grant access to a few services on Extreme Cloud IQ. particularly the redirector. So the redirector URL and IP address listed there, and ports 80 or 1222 need to be accessible for that AP to reach out. So that can either be the installation point of the AP, or in some cases, you might have to resort to a pre-staging location to allow that to connect, so that the AP will then be told to go into wing mode. So also, the AP will then, as part of the redirector function, will then connect to your account, or the point of presence of your account, the local remote regional data center that hosts your account. So that varies depending on where you are. So the recommendation is to, from your account, go into the About Extreme Cloud IQ, and you'll see a listing there on Firewall Configuration Guide. The configuration guide will highlight all the specific IP addresses that are that correspond to your regional data center. And so if you actually are positioning rules that are specific to certain IP addresses, you can get the IP address list from there that will indicate which RDC needs to be whitelisted for those APs to be able to access in their initial deployment. Next. So also just keep in mind, as we mentioned, universal access points are a new set of devices, or at least the capability of universal function on these devices, which some of them pre-existed without this capability. So these are new the capabilities which require a minimum firmware revision. So for deployments with Extreme Campus Controller and the 305C, you need to be at a minimum of 526.01 or Wing 7520. For the 410s, 460s models, on the Extreme Campus Controller, the same requirement of 526.01, but on Wing, you need to have 7620, which matches into the release target of June 1st, as Ro had identified. The AP302W, which just launched at the end of March, requires a minimum of 526.02 and correspondingly minimum OS on Wing of 7600. So we're just going to take you through a demo of this experience, an example experience of how to onboard an Extreme Cloud IQ, a universal AP into Extreme Cloud IQ from definition to operation. Okay, so universal experience, as I mentioned, starts with Extreme Cloud IQ. And if you don't have an account, simply click on the register and simply fill in a couple of minor devices, minor options on that registration form. And then once you have that, they will email you an account confirmation. I already have my own account, so I'm just simply going to log in and get my credentials in. Once I'm logged in, I can see the status of my account on all devices, but I'll go to the onboard menu. And from the onboard menu, as I mentioned, you now have the option to either onboard for cloud management or specifically for universal APs, onboard them for locally management. So on that locally management, you now have the option to start onboarding, and you can actually select one particular device, or if you have a bulk load of devices, you can import them through CSV. I'm just going to show you one particular device that I'm onboarding today. So I'm just going to list the serial number. The cloud is going to validate that the serial number is compatible with a minimum, with the model and the minimum serial number. It'll onboard us directly, and I'll now be able to see it on my account. Initially, because it's just been declared, it shows up with a generic host name. But as soon as that device now powers up and connects to the cloud, it will actually show up, and we'll pick up the actual host name of that device in the infrastructure. So in this case, now that AP has come in, has touched the cloud, and has learned that it actually is supposed to go into wing mode. But as you can see, I know the register because I now see that it picked up the host name for that particular device. So I'm actually just going to quickly show that I can now log into that AP to confirm that it's in fact actually now running the Wing OS. Normally in a deployment, you wouldn't see the step because the AP would actually automatically discover from the infrastructure. It would skip this entire point of state that I'm showing you right now. But just again, just to show you that's running Wing 7520. So it has transitioned from the IQ engine default image into running the Wing AP image. Now I'm going to my controller and show you that I actually don't have that AP available yet. And now the AP will actually reboot into Wing, or it's in the process of rebooting into Wing. And as soon as it comes out of that reboot, we'll connect to the controller, which now shows up. I'll see the serial number for that AP that I'd registered in the cloud now, but now it's discovered the controller, it's registered the controller. I can then go to the AP itself and start looking at some of the attributes, but more importantly, I actually need to assign to a site. So I'll simply select a site that I have pre-installed. I have a device group with the configuration settings for that access point. So I'm simply going to assign it, and that AP is now fully onboarded for service on the cloud controller. It will possibly undertake a software update, but once it actually does that, it comes back in and will then become fully available for service. So just refresh one more time. We'll be able to see that it has been configured to operate on a site, a specific set of networks, and doesn't really have much at this point because it's still in the process of coming up. Now that the AP has come up, I can now see that it's still in the configurations mode. And just refreshing one more time, I should now be able to see it come back into full operation mode. So just as soon as it reconfigures itself back up, now it has done its channel assessments, has figured out power levels. So as you can see, as the networks have been assigned, roles have been assigned, sites and even clients will now be visible on that particular device. So just one more time, I'll show you that it is running the network that I configured from the profile. I have the roles, but more importantly, now it's been served, it's been operational, and it's starting to serve clients. So very simply to fly in the cloud, let the cloud discovery mechanisms take over, and the AP comes in. For simplicity, obviously, once you have that AP registered, obviously it's hard to relate to serial numbers. So I always recommend to change the serial number definition of the AP name, which is default, to something more descriptive so that in your controller, you can tell what the APs are rather than the serial numbers. So that's essentially it. A couple of simple steps on board on the cloud to tell it to go to Wing, and it becomes fully operational. Thank you. So transitioning back on over to Rose, so she can continue on to cover accessories for the universal access points.
Thank you, Paula. Yes, I'd like to cover the accessories. It comes up quite a bit in the field. I just wanted to point out, we have an accessory guide with everything's detailed, and also the data sheets are updated with the accessories. But I wanted to mention about indoor accessories or indoor mounting. The AP410C ships with a -TB bracket in the box. So this, you would just buy spares, or if you have a different mounting option. The AP305C and CX has tabs, or what I call, built-in mounting for 15/16 deployment in the beam. If that's not a deployment option for you, then you have to order a separate accessory. So the AP460s in the series outdoor, you have to order your own mounting gear for outdoors. So we have an accessory guide. I just wanted to point this out. Also in the data sheets, it's updated with the correct mounting gear. And I also just like to emphasize that 305C and CX has tabs built in to the actual unit as opposed to a mounting bracket shipped in the box. So make sure you check out the accessories guide for what you need to ship. I'd also like to talk about, we added a capability to be able to tilt outdoor APs. Previously, you could only mount it to the wall or to a pole, and it would just be sitting there directly on the wall. So there's two options. Now, if aesthetics are really important and you want to keep the colors like sort of on the white tones, I would order, you need the accessory MBO KT-AX. That's an adapting mounting bracket for all the outdoor C model APs, whether it's the 460, the S6C, or the S12C. You can order the 147-407. That'll let you mount to a pole or a wall and do a plus or minus 15-degree tilt. If you need to extend it more on the wall, you can also order the KT-150-173-01. That'll give you 12 inches from the wall. That's if the aesthetics are important. Notice some of the stadium teams and the MLB teams, they like using the MBO02. That bracket lets you do more of a tilt and lets you do finer degrees than 15. You can go up to 45. You just have to be careful because you always want outdoor AP glands to be facing down for the weather. but you definitely have to order the accessory MBO KTAX. Everything is detailed in the accessory guide that was just released. We also have the ability to mount all indoor C models on a beam. And I get this request a lot. We just added this recently. This is actually a beam bracket. You can see to the right there. It shows you how you can mount an indoor AP to a beam, mostly in warehouses and things. So again, this is detailed in the accessory guide, and it's an fair accessory. Junction box. Probably the #1 ask from the field is the ability to mount on a junction box. A lot of the new installations are requiring the indoor APs to be mounted to a junction box. This works on all the C APs, the 305C, CX, the 410. I even listed the 510C and 650s. Those guys aren't universal, but this bracket actually works on them. So if you need anything about junction boxes, again, everything is detailed in the accessory guide. Aesthetically pleasing APs. This has to do with the routing of the cables, okay? So in the 305C and the 410C, if you actually want to hide the Ethernet cables, I recommend ordering these caps, the 305C and the 410C caps. They come in pack of 5, and that will actually hide your Ethernet cables. There's actually couplers that actually are in there and a flat cable. Again, these are detailed in the accessory guide. So I'd just like to wrap up on universal APs. It's a single hardware for multiple platforms, multiple use cases. So if you want to be on-prem, you can sit there on-prem. And if you actually even want to go to the cloud, you could reboot and go directly to the cloud. Paulo actually gave you a great detailed demo of that. We reduce the ability for sparing and needs, and it's a flexible OS. So what we're trying to do is give you a consistent user experience across the board. Thank you very much for attending our session. And if you have any questions, feel free to email us. Thank you.